everybody. Keith, aka Gator Guy 231. It is Thursday, July 16th. We have two EPL slates, both classic. There's some showdowns too, but the classics are kind of the featured event, so I'm going to be covering both of those. Obviously, all the content can still be very much used for showdown. Yeah, it should be a fun day. Gotta love mornings where you wake up. We get 9 a.m. MLS showdown. We'll be covering that in Discord for our subscribers. And man, if you all are football fans and you did not watch San Jose versus Vancouver last night, you missed just an absolute treat. So make sure y'all are playing that MLS action. It is awesome. And hell, it might be a lot more action than these EPL games give us today. But with that said, and with that amazing teaser out of the way, let's jump right into the action. So we got 2 and 2. So this is the first slate. This is the second slate. On the first game of the slate, both games lock at the same time. So we're going to have lineups. There's not going to be any of like this staggered starts today. So it should be fun. Two gamers are always kind of interesting to see, just little pivots that make a difference in cash. Also, just before I get too far into it, please subscribe bottom right to our YouTube channel. Really helps us continue to pump out all of this free content. Even hitting some strategy for your overall DFS playing. Hold the Door did that a few days ago. It's getting some awesome reviews from our FSI subscribers, so make sure you check that out on head-to-head selection. All right, so Everton, slight favorite at home. Now, I do want to kind of cover what each team is playing for, because I think over these next 3 games, so most teams have 3 games left to go, knowing what the teams are gunning for is huge. Like, it pains me to say as a Liverpool fan, but just Liverpool's just kind of toast right now in terms of what they're playing for. Like, since they clinched the Premier League title, you know, the records have not shown to be that important. They're just not the same team. They don't have that final like oomph that made them special of what they did. So we want to make sure that we're using that type of info in these games today and throughout the rest of the season to make sure that we have that leg up on our competition. So I say all that. Everton is playing for nothing. They are in the mid-table, which, you know, again, Liverpool fans, so I have to say where they belong. But Villa is very much playing for everything. I think that they're going to have to win out to avoid relegation. Here's the thing, they're winnable games. Everton, guy just had it up and I closed. I know West Ham's on that, who is playing very well. Here we go. So we have Arsenal, who, you know, Arsenal's Arsenal. They're beatable. So, you know, Villa's going to want to win out. We can't drop points, so they are going to be absolutely after it early. Leicester and Sheffield, both teams are playing for European places. Leicester for the Champions League. They are holding on to the slimmest of margins versus United. They are both tied on points. Goal difference right now I think it's goal difference, but anyhow, Leicester is above them on the table. So that is a must win for them. Meanwhile, Sheffield is 8th. They are 1 point behind Tottenham for likely the final Europa League spot, because City likely won the EFL Cup, likely win the FA Cup, meaning that there will be 3 Europa League spots based on standings. So that is the first slate of the day. Second slate, we see Southampton versus Brighton. Neither one of those teams have much to play for. That being said, Southampton has very, very much looked, and like, it's so weird. I think it's his name, right? It's House of Hoodle. But this is now 2 straight seasons that at the end of the season, they just absolutely fantastic. They potentially could have ruined United's Champions League run with that final header, and were lively throughout, beat City. So I do think that they are very much still in the swing of things and ready to play, versus Brighton, who's looked pretty dead. And then finally, we have Manchester United must win versus Palace, minus 333. Palace in the mid-table, not playing for much. They looked like they were not playing for much versus Brighton last week. All right, let's jump into kind of the plays. Sorry about that. So first off, I actually do want to start with Villa, because I do think Villa might be one of the sneakier teams on this first slate, and somebody that you really do want to get exposure to. So Jack Grealish, to me, is one of the first players in my lineup. Let's call him the demigod as DFS. His fouls drawn, his shots, and then his share of set pieces give him a double-digit floor every time out. The only times that you want to avoid him are just like insanely, bad matchups that you just worry about how much Villa could even have the ball. Everton, to me, the way that they're playing is not that bad of a matchup. And Grealish is like 8,500. I'll pull up the DK scoring so that I have it. But yeah, just for a midfield spot, that floor, I'm going to want Jack Grealish in my lineups. Trezeguet coming off the 2 goals, his price increased a lot. So to me, that's more GPP. Samada GPP. John McGinn and Connor Hourihane are both very solid cash plays. Hourihane is there only due to his set pieces. When he is on the pitch, McGinn will not take. If you do not see Hourihane, and McGinn will likely split with Jack Grealish, and at 4,900, McGinn would be a really solid cash play. That said, even with Hourihane you can still play John McGinn. Douglas Luiz, probably more GPP, but good player. Just he plays very centrally. Has to do a lot of defensive work if you don't see Marvelous Nakamba in with him. So that would be more GPP. El Mohammadi is the better of the 2 fullbacks. Matt Target, like at one point in the season, was awesome, was splitting sets, was attacking largely. I think that was when they were playing wingbacks. Just does not look the same, especially with him being potentially on a Richarlison side. Or I'm not playing Matt Target. If you're going to play a Villa fullback, let it be El Mohammadi. Pepe Reina in play, especially if you think that Everton doesn't show up. On the Everton side of things, I think Richarlison is going to be actually very chalky as a forward spot. There's a very good chance a lot of people are deciding on slate 1 if you're going to be paying up for Richarlison or Vardy. It's really hard to pay up for both and still get like Jack Grealish and some of the better overall floor plays. So because of Richarlison's log, because he does have a really solid floor in addition to goal scoring upside, I think he's going to be fairly chalky. I have said this for how many weeks, and it sucks, but I'm going to keep going back at it. I do think that Dominic Calvert-Lewin is a fine and possibly even a very, very good pivot off for Charleston Chalk. I think he's only 7,200. And similar goal scoring odds, not as good of a floor, but you're going to need the salary. I found it when I was building lineups last night. I found it pretty hard to get everything I wanted on this first slate, and Calvert-Lewin could actually help do that. Anthony Gordon, more GPP. Theo Walcott is forward eligible, but I don't know if he's fit for 90. So you would be paying, to me, kind of an insane price, 6,200 for not 90 minutes, whereas you could find 1,000 more, play Dominic Calvert-Lewin with a lot more upside. So that would be the way I'd go. One thing on Villa, my apologies, outside shot, I do think that like he has to play Trezeguet after he scored 2 goals and are the man of the match last weekend. But there's a chance that could be like El Ghazi, or maybe they move Jack Grealish back here for Hourihane, and then move El Ghazi up front. That's stuff I'm going to be looking for, because El Ghazi would be somebody I'd be very interested at sub 6K. Gylfi Sigurdsson, God. So he should be a good guy. He should be a cash play. Should. Blender uses the term in Gylfi I trust, and Gylfi I do not trust. If we look at Gylfi now, and I can do the log thing, but I can also like watch some of the games with my eyes, and I just don't know what he's doing. Let's take out the PK that he got on July 1st. Without the PK, he would have finished with 3.4 DK. So here's the other floor games. 7.9 last week versus Wolves. 7,600, that's kind of steep. 5.5, 1.6, 2.6, 1.8, 0.7. Do I trust Gylfi? No, I do not trust Gylfi. Queuing like a Hattie today, but it's just really hard to do that. Who I do trust is Lucas Dean, who on the counterpoint of that, his floor since the return, 7.1 versus Liverpool, which, that was a tough game. They didn't play their best group, their best lineup versus Liverpool. 20.1 with an assist versus Norwich, 6.8 versus Leicester, 10.8 versus Spurs, 17.4 with an assist versus Southampton, and 9.6. Look, you can actually make an argument. You can. That Dean is fadeable. It's just going to be really hard, especially in cash, to fade one of the better floors. So I think that that's where you are going to go. Grealish and Dean will be the most popular from this game. Seamus Coleman's fine in GPP, or I guess he's fine in cash, I should say. But he's just not looked like vintage Seamus in terms of bombing forward. All right, I think that wraps up Everton versus Villa. Leicester versus Sheffield. Let's start on the Leicester side of things. You're going to want to look for two things. You're going to try to see if James Maddison is in, who everything I've read is he's not fit, and then Mark Albrighton, who also I've been reading is not fit. Both of them are not in. Jordi Tielemans, who is on the cover of this video and this article, would be a lock at 6,100. So I kind of gave you pretty much 3 locks in my opinion. Obviously, all this could change based on lineups, but Jordi Tielemans will be on all set pieces and just a damn good player in his own right. Jamie Vardy, I think, is going to be like the decision that's going to potentially decide the slate. I think Sheffield United is playing really well. They're playing for a lot. Chris Wilder can absolutely scheme up a great defense. And without some of the more creative pieces, I do worry about Vardy's service. Like Jamie Vardy, of all players and of all strikers, is probably one of the most reliant on service of anybody. He has never, or at least I've never seen him, like break down a defense with his dribbling. Just like being the creative force. That's not him. He's kind of like a Chicharito type. Had somebody ask me about Chicharito a few nights ago. I'm like, he's a poacher. Jamie Vardy, I think, is a little less of a poacher because he makes a lot of these runs on the counterattack and just makes damn good runs. But he's so reliant on service. So without service, he could struggle, does not have a floor. So I think I am going to be fading in cash, obviously picking up some shares in GPP. Harvey Barnes is a little bit expensive for what he does, but still a good young player. On Showdown, maybe he's more in play than he would be on Classic. Ayoze Perez fills the forward spot. I'm just not a fan of how they use Ayoze Perez at Leicester. So I don't think he should be the price he is. It's a shame. Like, he's 6,800. Honestly, if he's like 5,500, he'd be in play. But otherwise, it's not. James Justin, to me, outside of Lucas Dean, is the premier fullback on the slate. He's fresh off of 7 crosses versus Bournemouth and 10.3 floor points. Honestly, if you compare his log and Lucas Dean, you take out the assist, and they're almost the exact same. Yet James Justin is almost 2,000 cheaper. So I think that is a very good look. Christian Fuchs, God, he used to be a good DFS player. He's played a lot of center back from this year, was playing fullback last game and still sucked. So I don't know if I can go back to it, but if I see another Andrew Laird cryptic Fuchs season tweet, he might just push me onto him. I think the problem is a lot of us remember vintage Christian Fuchs who crossed a ton and still want to see it. Yeah, I think that wraps up Leicester. Wilfred Ndidi also, especially on like FanDuel, where they count attempted tackles, not just tackles successful, is always a very good like cash foreplay there. And he's viable on DK. He's just a good player. Sheffield, let me just get a drink, throat try real quick. Sheffield, I've heard Fleck is going to be a late fitness test. Likely he makes the bench, but not starting lineup. So if he is not in Oliver Norwood, we'll continue to take a monopoly set pieces. It's only 5,100, so I think it's a very solid cash play. Leicester is not exactly the type that's going to dominate the game. Like Sheffield's definitely going to be able to get involved on the counter and even in possession. Sanderberg and Ben Osborne fit as two very good cash type of punts. Sanderberg even cheaper than Osborne. Big concern if you play Osborne and you see Fleck on the bench is Osborne probably will not see 90. Baldock and Stevens, obviously very solid cash plays as wingbacks. They haven't been crossing as much lately, but still getting there. Edna Stevens, needed the assist last time out, but that was a tough matchup. I have no problem going to either one of them as like a last person in, or maybe a second defender if I can't stretch up to Justin. McBurney, McGoldrick, both GPP. Neither one of them has any sort of floor. McGoldrick coming off of a ceiling game could actually be somewhat popular because of his price, and that's a really good spot to fade. On the back three, just keep in mind those Chris Basham and Jack O'Connell can actually be playable in cash. They will get crosses. They overlap the wingbacks. I just love Sheffield. So I love to watch Sheffield. I just think it's so interesting how much he gets out of so little in terms of talent. That's probably mean to say, but when you compare them to some of these other rosters and teams that they beat or swinging with, it's not even close. So I do think Dean Henderson will be a pretty popular goalie choice as the cheapest on the slate. Always prefer Sheffield at home, but I do think that Leicester could struggle. That's, Leicester's going to win 3-0 by the way my luck and my touting goes. Let's move on to the second slate. Manchester United versus Palace. I've already talked about Manchester United is the biggest favorite on any of the slates, but especially in the second one. They have everything to play for, where Crystal Palace is just sleepwalking. So I am going to be very, very heavy on my United exposure. First off, I would love to put Bruno Fernandes on the cover again, but I can only do it so many times. I have to take some time off of him gracing our website and our YouTube channel. But he is obviously the easy click and go play on the second slate. You should be first person in your lineup. You're going to figure out a way to make it work. I don't see any real value in the fade. From there, though, you need to decide. I think you need to use one of the United guys as your forward. So, picking Greenwood, Martial, Rashford. We saw, Greenwood has zero floor after that way he played versus Southampton. It might be a good time to go back to him after a lot of people got burned on Showdown for leverage. But, Marcus Rashford is one of the group that'll be the highest owned and has the best floor. And just, honestly, is the best player. Anthony Martial to me is the least cash viable of the bunch, just being the most goal dependent. Although, you could easily say now after watching Greenwood versus Southampton that he's goal dependent. He's not going to be accumulating. He's not tackling. He's not drawing fouls. He's shooting, getting shots assisted, or nothing else. I think one of the biggest things for the slate is the status of the United left backs. Now, Brandon Williams, I can't tell if he actually got a concussion or there's a really bad knock or has a concussion. They're just not going to disclose it. But anyhow, he went off versus Southampton after subbing in for Luke Shaw, who was also injured. So both guys are likely not fit. If Diego Dalot is in, he's only 3,500 and would just be a very easy value. Paul Pogba continues to be underpriced, especially for Showdown. Just a better player than his price is there, especially when you see Nemanja Matic in gives Pogba free range to roam. Probably more Showdown than Classic, but especially if you want to get some extra United, he's a good, underpriced option to do so. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, hashtag revenge game versus Palace. Is it really a revenge if you get paid by a team helping you? It's not like he left on bad terms, but I think he's fine. The biggest concern is obviously if he's on Wilfried Zaha's side. Zaha's going to run at him all game. I can just see that being trying to think of the right word. Whatever word I'm trying to think of that I keep wanting to say nippy. That's not the word. But anyhow, feisty. I cannot think this morning. But I could see that both guys picking up the yellow card, so I probably will not be on Aaron Wan-Bissaka, and I just don't see him bombing forward. Yeah. And then if you want GPP, YOLO, Harry Maguire goal, that works. Palace. So if this is the lineup, we would see Milosevic and Patrick Van Aanholt split sets. Do I want either one of them for Classic? Not so much. Maybe as a last man in on Showdown. If you do see McCarthy in, there's a chance that Milosevic could lose his sets to him. Just know that. I don't necessarily know if that gets you off, puts you onto McCarthy or changes that much. Just know it, especially for Showdown strategy. I think everybody in Palace to me is more GPP. I think we're going to be looking at our other places in the other game. But if you want, you think United concedes or that Palace is just going to love to spoil United's plans, which absolutely could be the case. I talked many times, Selhurst Park, especially at night, is tough to go to. Just no fans in the crowd, so, it loses some of that mystique. But you want to go Wilfried Zaha or Jordan Ayew goal, go for it. I think it's also worth noting, yeah, that's right. Christian Benteke got the red card after the game was over. So he will miss the game. So Andrews Townsend, that is a very interesting forward plug. I got to pull up that slate, but I didn't even think of it last night when I was preparing. But I would assume that he is very cheap. Yeah, 3,700. Shoot, man, that changes the whole slate around. So if you could plug Andrew Townsend in one of your forward spots, you're really not going to struggle to get up to Rashford. And then with some of the value that I already went over below, Lamptey for Brighton's really cheap. That could really make building fun. So yeah, so I think Townsend will be super popular. He's probably the cash play for Crystal Palace, and you go from there. All right, just on Townsend, he's somebody that potentially could take some corners, especially if Patrick Van Aanholt doesn't want to run all the way across the field. Townsend's very capable of taking the end swingers and then crosses plenty in open play. He's a sub risk at 3,700. What else do you want to fill a forward spot? The only reason that maybe you wouldn't do that is if you want to be a little contrarian and want to pay up twice at forward. I do think that Danny Ings is an elite play. And actually a really good pivot off of maybe some United chalk. If Rashford and Martial and Greenwood all look like they're going to be really popular, Danny Ings is priced under all of them at 8K. I really like him to score today. On Southampton, I just went over Danny Ings. I think is cash viable. Is he a traditional cash play? No, but I do really like the play, especially with how open Brighton plays. James Ward-Prowse is your cash lock. Monopoly set pieces, great technical taker. Just easy. Like if he was 10K, I'd still be trying to figure out a way to jam him into my lineups. And at 8,200, he just kind of seems like a free square to me. Nathan Redmond was the guy I was going to mention being cash viable as a second forward, but maybe you don't need to go there if Townsend is in, but I still think it's viable. Shane Longmore, GPP. Stuart Armstrong playing fantastic. Only issue is because he's playing so fantastic, his price is up all the way to 7,200. He won't go very owned at 72. So, if you want to kind of like go for the Southampton goal, which I think they definitely will get at least one versus Brighton, that might be the lower owned way. He or Ings, I really like to be the ones to show up. Ryan Bertrand, it's always fine, but, I've been wanting to fade him at his little slightly inflated tag. He had that run where he was double digits every game when he was splitting sets with Ward-Prowse. Not so much now. That said, this is a matchup he will be able to get forward on, so I think he's fine for cash. Kyle Walker-Peters never does much for me. If he's a last man or your second defender and you want maybe correlation with Alex McCarthy, go for it. On the Brighton side of things, Tariq Lamptey jumped out to me as one of the more mispriced players on the slate. Really nice young fullback, only 3,100. In a matchup that Brighton still should have some of the ball. So I think that's really solid. I will be watching to see if Pascal Gross is in, not only because Pascal Gross in himself would be a cash viable play as a forward filler. He is only 6,400 and jumps almost on all of Brighton's sets when in. But if he is not in, Aaron Moy is only 4,700, which seems like a bit of a soft price for him. He would likely jump on sets if we did not see McAllister or Gross. And at 4,700 to get a monopoly of sets would be awesome, especially for a player that is just a good player. Neil Mauploy and Aaron Connolly, both more GPP, but God, Connolly, I actually really enjoyed watching play. He's just very aggressive, very lively. Would love to see the kid show up and get his goal. Neil Mauploy, more of the traditional striker, high-volume shooter. Probably not the matchup or the slate for him, but will come in under own. Dan Burns, super cheap fullback. Not the most traditional fullback, but he's going to get wide. We'll get a few crosses in, so that works. Leandro Trossard, more GPP for me. Doesn't have a share of set pieces anymore, but a good player. I think that kind of wraps it up. I'll just say this. I say this every single show, so if this is your first time watching, first off, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed all the soccer talk. But if you're playing a GPP, just keep this in mind. Cash strategy, like what I would go over, cash/optimal strategy, and the strategy you need to employ in these like $15 top-heavy GPPs are very, very different. If a lineup feels too good and you're looking at all for floors, you should still enter in the GPP, right? I'm not telling you not to enter your cash lineup in there. But what I'm telling you is if you have a lineup that you feel is going to be chalky, it has a negative expected value in that big GPP, because if you just min cash, you're not even doubling your money. So you can't survive that way because you're going to have more, only top 24 or 25% get paid out. And if you can't even double your money, that means the next time that you play with that same lineup and you don't cash, you are already down. You are already losing money. So you need to be, when you're entering that in, and no matter how many entrants you're going to do, you need to be thinking about how you could differentiate. What are some outcomes that are not as likely to that other people are going to cover. So, I already talked about Dominic Calvert-Lewin will be half, maybe a quarter of the ownership of Richarlison. You could go, if you think Villa is going to win 2-0, you can try to get those Villa's goals. Like you can play Samata as their striker who won't be owned at all, maybe 10, 15%. Trezeguet after 2 goals might be over-owned. So maybe you could pivot off and go to like McGinn, hopefully shows up with the goal, or like a Tyrone Mings header as a min-price center back. These are the type of moves that you want to just understand the guys that might not be that highly owned or the combinations that aren't going to be owned and work on making those in your lineups. Look, I'm saying all this, and I'm not that great at it as a player, right? Like that's something I'm continuously improving on. But doing this, talking to some of the elite GPP players, who it's just been awesome now show up in our Discord and are talking to me about strategy and asking, it's changed a lot of my thinking on GPPs. I used to be the guy, find my cash lineup, play it a couple times in GPPs, max enter like the quarter and the $1, get a decent ROI, but never spiking the big one. And you really got to change your thinking on that. That said, cash game's a completely different story. You want to look at floors. You want optimal builds. If it's shared and it looks too good, probably means it's the right lineup. Get it in there. Try to find some head-to-heads of some not so experienced players and make a good return on your investment that way. I hope this helps, and I wish you all the best of luck today. Good luck, and I will see you next time. See you.